Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to the desktop for another rules breakdown. And this time I'm going to be doing Eoris Essence, a 2010 role-playing game from Visions of Essence. Now it's a Colombian role-playing game by two artists, and it is absolutely gorgeous to behold. But the amount of lore in this game, and the amount of artwork and detail that goes into it, and the way that magic is woven into the system, I will be not doing this system or the game any justice at all in a simple rules breakdown like this. As these rule breakdowns are planned just to do your basic skill use, your basic initiative, getting in your first combat, there's so much else in this game which I'll not be touching on. So if you can pick it up, if you fancy a game with a massive background and lore, such a detailed world which is very, very different from anything else I've read, plus one of the best produced and presented role-playing games I have ever seen in my life, then check this out. So skills are dealt with on page 11 of the second rulebook, and it mentions that they use a dice pool system. Now that's very much like the storyteller system from White Wolf, where you take an attribute and a skill and you add the dice together and roll that many dice. So in the example, the narrator tells the player to roll an awareness skill plus senses attribute check to determine if his character will be able to anticipate an upcoming trap. Thus the player adds his character's awareness score and senses score to determine the number of dice to be rolled, the dice pool. If the character has 3 points in awareness and 2 points in senses, the player will roll a dice pool of 5 dice. So we've got 5 dice here. But we also have to bear in mind that we have the dice roll limit. So this is usually 12, although a games master can decide to have a smaller dice roll limit. However, if your dice pool is higher than that limit, so the dice pool limit's 12, you have 14 dice to roll, then 2 are considered automatic successes. So skills over that aren't wasted. They are actually better. They're just avoiding you rolling absolute buckets of dice. Now, one of your dice must be always different, because that's your essence dice. And that's dealt with on page 14. So, one dice in your dice pool must be an essence dice. It has different effects. So, if you succeed, and your essence dice is one of the dice that succeeds, you can keep rolling it until you roll a failure. And those successes add to your number of successes. So you can succeed far better. If you roll a 1 on the essence dice and have no successes, then it's an absolute tragedy, botch if you will. An unfortunate success is if you roll a 1 on your essence dice but fails on the other dice. An overwhelming success is if you succeed but you get a 20 on that dice as well, your essence dice. Now the target number on these dice is 15. Although certain things affect that target number, difficulty is actually moderated by the number of successes you need to roll. It's standardly a 15 you're trying to roll. So let's roll these 5 dice. So we have a 20, but that's just an ordinary success, an 18, and everything else is a fail, including the essence dice. But it's not a 1, so it doesn't actually matter that much. And we have 2 successes. So if the Games Master had determined that the trap had a target number of 2, then we'd have spotted it. If it was 3, 4, we'd have failed. So initiative is dealt with on page 18, and there are 2 different types of initiative, depending on whether it's physical combat or social combat. But basically it's based on your mind and your reflexes. And everybody rolls those dice, and whoever gets the highest goes first. Whoever gets the least goes last. It's as simple as that. Now the amount of actions you get depends on how many action points your character has and how many of those are required by each action. So if you've got 8 action points, we can see the simple actions, things like unsheathing a weapon, require 2. Normal actions, a simple attack, is 4. Complex action is 6. You can attack with a heavy weapon. Fast attacks deal half damage, but reduce the action point of action by 2. If a warrior is using a heavy axe, which would consume 6, but decides to perform a fast attack, he now consumes 4 and deals half damage. So you can juggle around your action points by producing normal attacks and fast attacks, doing multiple things in your turn. But your actual combat sequence is determined by your initiative dice pool roll. and how many successes you got. Now, combat's dealt with on page 20, and is using the same sort of dice pool as skills. This time for combat, you're using your dice pool based on your combat skill plus broad dexterity, although use your fine dexterity if you're using a firearm, a bow, a crossbow, or other light weapons, ranged weapons basically. And a defender is using, if they're evading, dodge plus reflexes, generating a force field, barrier plus spirit, blocking, parry plus reflexes. And there's 2 ones for Corsair here, which are outside the realms of this simple rules breakdown. But basically, you're rolling your dice pool, they're rolling their dice pool, and if the attacker gets higher, then they hit, but they need to keep track of their net successes. Now, obviously, there's combat, and there's lots of more complex things, twin attacks, countering, grappling attacks, etc. detailed in here. But you're simple, trying to hit something, you're rolling your dice pool against your target's defending dice pool. So damage is dealt with over on the next couple of pages. Firstly, we've got generating physical damage, and we've got formats here for melee damage, using body or weapon, grappling, etc. But weapons are actually dealt with over the page, so we're now on to page 24. So, swords, for example, are sharp or pointed heavy objects and do 4 points of damage. Now we add any net successes to that. So, assuming our attacker had 5 successes on his dice and the defender had 3, that would be 2 net successes. So we'll be doing 6 damage, 4 plus the 2 net successes. Now armor takes away from that damage directly. So if you're wearing armor, it takes away, and if that reduces the damage to 0, then you take no damage whatsoever. Armor can totally overwhelm an attack and protect you completely. So health is also dealt with on page 24, and is one of the more slightly complex parts of the system, because it involves 3 separate attributes, 2 of which you must monitor the level of. Firstly, we've got hit points. So these are like your hit points in Dungeons & Dragons, and when you lose hit points, until you get to 0 when you fall over. You have your toughness. Now your toughness measures, as well as being involved in calculating your hit points, but it measures how much damage you can receive in a combat round and how much damage you can receive in a single attack. And finally, you've got life points, which monitors how many injuries you get, which is what happens when an attack is over your toughness. So, in our sample attack, we did 6 points of damage. Now, we calculate out the hit points by multiplying toughness by life points. Let's say each of those is 3, so they've only got 9 hit points. This is a very low amount, but it'll do for our calculations here. Their toughness is actually calculated out by constitution times 2, plus strength divided by 2, plus resilience divided by 2. And then your life points is equal to your willpower score. So, somebody who has 9 hit points receives 6 points of damage. Well, they're still standing because they've received 6 points of damage, they've got 9 hit points, they've got 3 left. However, their toughness was only 3, because we said it was 3 times 3. So 6 points is over their toughness, so they receive an injury. Now, they can stand up to 3 injuries, because we said their life points was equal to 3 as well. So 1 injury doesn't bother them. Even though we did 6 points of damage, which is 3 times 2, they only receive 1 injury for each attack. Because they've got an injury, they now suffer a -1 dice penalty for each injury to all physical action dice pools. So if they had received 2 injuries, they'd be down 2 dice from each pool, but they only received 1, so they're only down 1 dice for every physical action they do from now on. Now, when they get more injuries than life points, they will die. Hit points, however, you just fall over, and you can heal back. The other thing about injuries is they create a cap on how many hit points you can heal back. And that cap is the amount of injuries you have times your toughness. So, if you have 1 injury and you have 3 toughness, then there's 3 hit points you cannot heal back. So even though in the sample combat, they only had 9 hit points, they can only heal up to 6 because they've got 1 injury. If they had 2 injuries, then that would be 6 points they couldn't heal. So they'd only be able to heal up to 3 hit points. But that's how it works. The damage comes straight off your hit points. If the damage is higher than your injuries, then higher than your toughness rather, you receive an injury. If you have more injuries than you have life points, then you die. The other thing about toughness worth mentioning as well, though, is that if you receive over your toughness amount of wounds or damage in one combat round, so even if it's not enough to receive an injury, if you get attacked 2 or 3 times and the damage totals more than your toughness, you fall over and you have to climb back up. You're knocked over. You'll have a penalty of 2 successes in your next initiative roll. Advancement is dealt with on page 70 and 71 of the second rulebook, and is dealt with through experience points. Now, you gain experience through your normal actions, success or failure, attempting challenging actions, training, and attaining mastery. Mastery is every time a character rolls a 20 on the essence dice, he accumulates enlightenment points for the specific skill which the action was performed. Enlightenment points are used to purchase masteries, which enhance the essence dice by reducing the number that needs to be rolled to attain an overwhelming success. But spending your experience itself, if you're increasing an attribute, let's say you're increasing one from 3 to 4, it costs the intended attribute level number times 50. So 4 times 50 is 200 points. For increasing skills, it's the intended skill level number times 20. So 3 to 4 would be 80. And we've got Seer, Innocences and Skills, Omega Transcendence, Powers, Auras, all of which are outside the scope of this video. It also recommends that you record the total experience that you earned over your character's life, not just what you've currently got, because that shows how powerful your character is. So that was Eoris Essence, a brief look through the rules of it. Now, this is one of the most amazingly well presented and beautiful role-playing games I've ever seen. And the setting and background is absolutely fascinating, with so many good ideas and so many interesting things packed in there. However, I can see why it didn't find its audience, because it is a bit maybe out there and different to anything else on the market. But that kind of diminishes the role-playing industry a bit, that something as well done as this, with so many good ideas and presented so beautifully, couldn't succeed. But anyway, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough, so thank you very, very much for watching. But, as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.